Coming up on UCF Nightly News, President Trump's recent hospital stay is bringing up a question about presidential candidates' health. Keep watching to find out how the government plans to answer this.
Plus, residents in Osceola County will be voting for their first Hispanic sheriff on November 3rd. Find out who the two current candidates are and what their backgrounds play in their campaign.
And later, health officials say gloves provide a false sense of security from COVID-19. Learn what a doctor says about wearing gloves during the pandemic.
Nightly News starts now. Good afternoon and welcome to Nightly News. I'm Natalie Monalegre.
And I'm Kai Rodriguez. Today is Friday, October 9th, 2020. Here's your coronavirus update. Over 900 positive cases since the start of the semester are being reported by UCF officials. That's an increase of over 87 since last week. Statewide, as of today, over 726,000 positive cases and more than 15,000 deaths are being reported by the Florida Department of Health. And nationally, over 7.6 million cases and more than 212,000 deaths are being reported by Johns Hopkins University.
Students are still reacting after American gun rights activist and controversial social media personality Caitlin Bennett made an appearance again on campus yesterday. Nightly News reporter Madison Little tells us why Bennett felt that it was necessary to return.
UCF Republicans gathered on campus in a peaceful protest with Caitlin Bennett and a large police presence. Some students say they participated in the protest to support their political party and their president. This is Bennett's second visit to campus where she was confronted by a large group of students. But she says she chose to come back after conflicts in her last visit simply because, why not? She says she isn't going to let a group of students control her.
I will keep coming back until you guys learn how to be emotionally stable and tolerant like you try to say that you are. So you caused this. Thank you so much.
Democratic Party supporters also showed up to voice their opinions. Some students say it is wrong that Bennett was even allowed back on campus. Political science major Cole Smith says he doesn't value anything she believes in and thinks her return to campus was a mistake.
I hate her with my entire being. Last time she was here, she caused a bunch of problems. I'm surprised that UCF PD is supporting her coming back on campus.
Some students posted to social media stating they do not want her on campus at all. In Orlando, Madison Little, UCF Nightly News.
UCF PD and other local police stations were on campus and say that they were told by the group to ensure that there is no conflict.
And we have some breaking news. This morning, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi announced the creation of a bipartisan commission of health professionals to assess a president's fitness to serve. This is a never-before-used first step to temporarily remove a president from their duties under the 25th Amendment, if they are deemed to be incapacitated. Pelosi says this move is to account for a possible situation down the line and is not a direct response to President Trump's COVID diagnosis. Trump responded a short time ago in a tweet calling Pelosi crazy. But with COVID-19 cases on the rise in the White House, a situation in which a presidential candidate could become incapacitated is emerging. Nightly News reporter Peyton Maciejewski tells us how the government may address the situation.
President Trump's COVID-19 diagnosis and subsequent hospital stay brings upon a question few have asked before. What would happen if a presidential candidate passed away in the weeks before the election? The answer to this is not quite clear, with many different areas of government potentially getting involved. UCF political science professor Aubrey Jewett says the period of time in which a candidate were to pass away is crucial.
It's about a 1 month period there that if the person died or became incapacitated, that's where we are most legally unsure of exactly how things would progress.
Jewett also says this time would be between the state's elections in early November and when the Electoral College meets to cast their votes in early December. As you can see, the Florida sample ballot has both presidential candidates listed. If one of these candidates were to pass away right now, voting would still continue. But the question as to who would actually step into the presidency, well, that would only be answered after a lengthy legal battle. Lawsuits would come from jurisdictions at the state level and work their way up to the U.S. Supreme Court. In July of this year, Justice Elena Kagan acknowledged this hypothetical situation in a footnote of a case, but did not list a plan of action. Legal studies professor James Beckman says in order to handle this situation properly, a law should be passed.
A federal law, passed by Congress, signed by the president, specifying procedure in place, an election law statute dealing with what should happen in scenarios like this.
But without legal precedent guiding the way, the answer to this question would be one for the history books. In Orlando, Peyton Maciejewski, UCF Nightly News.
President Trump is back in the White House, but whether or not he is COVID-19 free is unclear at this time.
President Trump refuses to participate in next week's debate following an announcement that it will be held virtually. UCF debate team tells Nightly News reporter Easton Underdahl how the debate would work.
Nielsen estimates more than 73.1 million people saw the first presidential debate. Those watching could see just how easy it is to lose control of the candidates. Last week's moderator is receiving a lot of backlash following the debate, with some tweets saying he was failing to rein in an unruly Trump. Anna Jerlina is the captain of UCF's debate team. She says college competitions are very different than presidential debates because the moderator gets to choose who wins.
So if a moderator is telling you to do something like stop speaking, at that point you will, because you want to obviously win the debate.
A recent Quinnipiac poll shows 97% of Americans know who they're voting for, with thousands continuing to submit their ballots. Jerlina says debates are a part of American tradition and help answer questions websites can't.
They're educational. Like, for example, for Kamala Harris, I didn't even know that they were promising anybody with less than $120,000 in income would go to college for free. I feel like that's an interesting point that might sway some moderates.
Without notifying the candidates, the Commission of Presidential Debates announced next week's debate will be held virtually in light of Trump's positive coronavirus test. But he's calling it a waste of his time.
I'm not going to waste my time on a virtual debate. That's not what debating's all about. You sit behind a computer and do a debate. It's ridiculous.
Director of UCF's debate program, Zeth Fenley, says a virtual debate would help Americans relate to the candidates.
Having a virtual one, it further shows sort of where we've come as a country through the pandemic, because we're able to see them in the same environment that most of us are interacting in on a daily basis.
Trump's campaign manager is calling for the debate to be pushed back 1 week so it can be held in person. This making the final debate less than a week before Election Day. In Orlando, Easton Underdahl, UCF Nightly News.
Trump claims a virtual debate would unfairly benefit his opponent Joe Biden. If held, it would be the first one in 60 years since John F. Kennedy and Richard Nixon.
The lack of an American Sign Language interpreter at the presidential debate is being pointed out by a viral TikTok video. I spoke to people in the deaf and hard of hearing community to find out more as to why this is a concern. The Association on Higher Education and Disability, also known as AHEAD, states in an article that without ASL interpreting, people are being denied timely access to critical information. The director of Student Accessibility Services at UCF, Adam Mayer, says that although captions are being provided on certain channels, it is not effective for everyone.
Quite a few people who are deaf and hard of hearing who are fully fluent in ASL, their understanding of the common or standard English language could be very limited. So that's why captioning is not necessarily seen as an accessible form of communication.
AHEAD states that captioning is not perfect in all cases, that many times captioning can be delayed and inaccurate. UCF alumnus Joey Felicioni says the lack of accessibility and accommodations is upsetting.
It makes me feel inferior than most hearing Americans. It makes me feel that deaf or hard of hearing lives are not valued. In addition, it tells me you think deaf or hard of hearing do not benefit or need to know about politics, but we do.
Doctoral candidate Jonathan Solomon says other countries are managing to provide interpreters for government-related things, yet the U.S. is not.
Government-related, it should be accessible to all. In a country that does not have a national language such as English, and we have people of all different types, backgrounds and language usage, the language barrier being in English is not accessible.
Solomon says that this is the same for other languages such as Spanish, but that there are channels that translate for them, while the deaf and hard of hearing community do not have that. In Orlando, Kai Rodriguez, UCF Nightly News. It is unclear whether there will be an ASL interpreter at the next presidential debate and where that debate will even take place. Now, Taylor, what's the sitch with the weather today?
Kai, I am so glad you asked. Currently, it is 81 degrees and there's an 85% humidity level, which is clear by my hair, and the east winds are going about 6 miles per hour and there's a 40% chance of rain. As for tonight, the low will be 71 degrees and the humidity again is 85%, with winds going east-southeast at 5 to 10 miles per hour, and there's only a 10% chance of rain for tonight. That's all the weather I have for now. Back to you, Natalie and Kai.
Coming up next, Disney continues to furlough the company's employees because of ongoing pandemic. Hear what former cast member has to say about losing her job and what a company is doing to help her during this time.
Plus, the deadline to complete the census has been extended once again, this time to October 31st. Stay tuned to find out how COVID-19 makes the job for census workers harder than ever before. The race for the Osceola County Sheriff is underway. Nightly News reporter Jenna Ehrlich tells us more about how those voting in Osceola this upcoming election will be helping create history.
Residents in Osceola County, when filling out their ballot this election season, will be voting for the county's first Hispanic sheriff. Over half of Osceola County's population is Hispanic at 55.3%, with the numbers continuing to grow as shown by Data US. Democratic candidate Marco Lopez says as the Hispanic population in Osceola County continues to grow, residents should consider proper representation when selecting their government officials.
I really want to do and provide a better public service. We need to really start looking like the people we serve, diversify our sheriff's department.
Non-party affiliate Tony Fernandez says if he wins, though being the first Hispanic sheriff is an honor, he said that is not his only reason for running.
I want to empower the Hispanic people. They can achieve whatever they want, run for official elected, any office, or become a law enforcement. So we equal.
Criminal justice major Juju Tengalia says it is important to have a sheriff who is able to understand the needs of those in the community.
I do love the representation. I do think that having someone like that in office is great, especially if where they work, their community is mostly Latino.
Both candidates say regardless of who becomes the new Osceola sheriff, they are both glad to be a part of history. In Kissimmee, Jenna Ehrlich, UCF Nightly News.
Those who want more information on the two candidates running for Osceola Sheriff can visit the current candidates page on the Vote Osceola website. 2020 marks a new decade which calls for a new count. Nightly News reporter Monica Seeley tells us more about the 2020 census.
It's not every day that someone knocks on your door to ask you how many people live in your house. In fact, it only happens once every 10 years. The census is a nationwide survey that tallies up how many people live in the U.S. and determines how congressional seats and federal funding is distributed. Stephen Maceda, director of the Florida Joint Center for Citizenship, says people who are impacted by issues such as internet access and stable housing may not be putting the census at the top of their list.
If you have more pressing concerns like putting food on your table than filling out a census form, then you're going to prioritize one over the other, understandably.
Maceda says the pandemic makes it even harder to get a proper count, so the Bureau is extending the deadline. Responding to the census is required by law. You can submit your survey via phone, online, or by mail. But you have to act fast because the pandemic isn't the only thing threatening an accurate count. The Trump administration is once again trying to shorten the response deadline. They say the response rate is high and extra time is not necessary, but some civil rights groups insist that the count is not done. As of right now, the deadline to submit surveys is October 31st. Orange County Complete Count Committee Chair Melvin Pittman says this extra time is essential for the community.
What we do today is going to affect what happens to people, our residents, 10 years down the road here as far as the population count. So we need to make sure everybody gets counted now.
Pittman says the committee is working with local churches and food drives as well as using social media platforms to make sure that residents complete the census. In Orlando, Monica Seeley, UCF Nightly News.
You and your family count, so make sure you head over to census.gov to respond to the survey.
Theme parks in Orlando continue to lay off thousands of employees. Nightly News reporter Lauren Margolis tells us how this is impacting day-to-day lives and what it means for park employees in the future.
The happiest place on earth may become a little less happy for the thousands of employees Disney says it's laying off this year.
The announcement that Disney is laying off 28,000 employees comes as companies worldwide are seeing major budget cuts due to the ongoing pandemic. Caitlin Busker is a wife and mother who knows exactly how it feels to lose a job during a pandemic. Busker says she got the call no employee wants to hear. She says the magic of Disney is still there for her and the company still feels like family.
I didn't take it personally when I got the call. I have no, bitterness towards the company. I think everyone did the best that they could in a kind of crazy situation.
Hospitality professor, theme park expert, and former Disney cast member Carissa Baker says the layoffs are happening because Disney just has too many cast members and not enough guests right now.
For them not getting that market, those visitors from other places, that's going to be a hard hit economically.
In terms of theme parks and other businesses, Baker says she believes companies will have more jobs available once more money starts coming in again. The problem is nobody knows for sure how long that will be. For now, Disney says it will provide resources like career counselors for former employees to help ease the transition.
Even though I'm sad, the number of text messages and emails and direct messages of people that are just so supportive has been really, really heartwarming and uplifting.
In Orlando, Lauren Margolis, UCF Nightly News.
The hashtag Hiring Disney is being used across social media by members of Disney community to support employees facing layoffs.
And coming up, Taylor Toole tells us what the weather is looking like this week.
And we'll hear from our Puerto Rico correspondent for an island update.
Now here's an update from our Puerto Rican correspondent, Alanis Quiñones, about the island's governor.
Although COVID-19 cases have increased significantly on the island, this new executive order does not contain any international travel restrictions. This new order was signed by the governor while she was visiting the States to campaign with Trump. Now, this can affect Central Florida because Orlando receives an average of 16 flights daily from Puerto Rico. But because of the island's territorial status, it would need federal approval in order to establish any flight restrictions whatsoever. And while the focus seems to be on the ballots, the health secretary is suggesting the next executive order to be much more restrictive instead of more flexible, as all of the ones signed up until today. Now back to Orlando for more Nightly News.
Thank you for that update.
While some may think that gloves are protecting their immune system, new research indicates wearing gloves may increase the spread of COVID-19. Gloves seems like a good idea, but health officials say they provide a false sense of security. Dr. Jeff LaRochelle, the Assistant Dean of Medical Education at UCF's College of Medicine, says gloves are part of the medical professional personal protection equipment. Doctors follow a strict disposal method to avoid contamination, which everyday people do not. Dr. LaRochelle says people wear gloves thinking they protect their hands but end up transferring germs to personal belongings.
It's difficult to kind of have that kind of focus and vigilance to not contaminate other things with those gloves. And I think that's why people often say that it provides kind of a false sense of security. Because
Dr. LaRochelle says it's easier to wash your hands than worry about the proper glove safety. However, if people choose to wear their gloves, he suggests they should limit gloves to single use. The CDC recommends washing your hands for at least 20 seconds and disinfecting surfaces touched often.
Hey Taylor, what's the weather looking like for the weekend?
I am so glad you asked, Kai, because I'm going to tell you about it now. All right, in Tallahassee, we have a high of 85 today, and Jacksonville is neck and neck at 84. Tampa is at 91 degrees, and Orlando is sitting at 88 degrees, and Miami is at 84 degrees, so steamy there. And as for the low, we have a 54 degrees in Tallahassee, 74 degrees in Jacksonville. Tampa is at 74 as well, and Orlando is at 71, and Miami is still steaming at 80. And now for your 5-day. As we go throughout the week, Saturday we have 88 degrees for the high, 74 degrees for the low with a 60% chance of rain. And Sunday we have 90 degrees and a 75-degree low with another 60% chance of rain. And Monday is about the same at 89 degrees for the high, 72 for the low, and a 50% chance of rain. And now as we move through the week, we have Tuesday at 89 degrees, and that's the high, and 72 degrees for the low, and a 20% chance of rain. And we finish off on Wednesday with 87 for the high, 69 for the low, and a 20% chance of rain. Now back to you guys.
When we come back, Charlotte Tratner gives us an update on all things sports.
Oh my gosh, I was still on camera.
Hey Knights fans, I'm Charlotte Tratner, and here's today's sports update. After UCF's loss against Tulsa last week, head football coach Josh Heupel says the team is taking advantage of the bye week. He says the team is growing and cleaning up their plays before next Saturday's game against Memphis. UCF student athletes are 100% registered to vote for the upcoming presidential election. Athletes at UCF are all ready to vote and say all students should participate this election season. Different sports teams are posting on social media platforms, including Instagram, to let non-athletes know the teams are supporting the 2020 voting initiative. UCF volleyball player McKenna Melville says it's important for student athletes to encourage other students to get involved with the election.
So for us to be able to be like, yes, we've done it. It's not that hard. We can do it. Our whole student athlete base can do it. It kind of encourages other people to jump into the voting idea.
Students can no longer register to vote. Melville says student athletes will continue to post and remind their followers the importance of voting on November 3rd. Melville and her teammates say everyone, not only student athletes, need to make their voices heard this presidential election. And Knights, that's all the time we have for sports today. Back to you, Kai and Natalie.
That's all the time we have right now. Thanks for joining us. Remember to always keep up with us during the week on social media, at UCF Nightly News.
And if you've got a story idea you want us to know about, send it our way. You can reach us at nightlynewsucf@gmail.com. Thanks for watching, everyone, and charge on.